Before I can tell you about who Miesha the CEO is, I have to tell you who Miesha the person is. I come from very humble beginnings, and I know you guys hear people say that when they write about me. I grew up on St. Clair, 118th and St. Clair, and my childhood, I would tell you, my story means that I should not be sitting here today. My childhood story would say that I would be strung out with probably 7 kids and a teenage mother, but that's not me. So I have to kind of give you a little bit of background of who I am and how I got to where I am today. I was born to a mother at 15 years old, and my mother actually went on to have 7 more kids, so I'm the oldest of 8. I have been through foster care after being molested by my father. I was ultimately raised by my grandmother for 10 years of my life because my mother had become really strung out on drugs. And during that time, my mother she stole something from a guy that was dealing drugs or whatever the case, but he held us hostage in our apartment. We lived in the projects right across from East Tech. And at this time, I was about 8 years old, and my mother, after being held hostage in our bathroom for about 5 hours, she had this brainstorm to put her out the window. So there was a payphone back then, you just go dial 0, and that's how you call collect. So she put me through the window, and I went out and called my grandmother. And the next thing I know, my grandmother and my great aunt, they came down with a pistol and a rifle.
That's how you do it. All right.
And they rescued us out of that situation. I never went back. My grandmother raised me from that day forward. So again, I was raised on 118th and St. Clair. I went to Glenville High School, Patrick Henry, and I went on to stay here and get my first degree from Tri-C. So a lot of people around me would tell me that staying here and going to Tri-C was a bad decision. You need to go away to a 4-year school, blah, blah, blah. But the reality of it was we didn't have any money. So Tri-C was affordable, and I knew that I didn't want to do nothing. So it was better to do something than to do nothing. So I went to Tri-C and accomplished getting my first associate's degree in business. And then they offered a bridge program where you could stay at Tri-C and get a 4-year degree from Tiffin University. So I talked myself, and I'm always talking myself, I talked myself into going for this 4-year degree. And then in the midst of that, I met my husband. And at that point, I was burned out. I said, I don't ever want to go to another classroom again in my life. And he says, you gotta get this master's, Mom. You can do it, you know. And he talked me into getting my master's. And through that point, new life was formed. I was going to school full time. I was an analyst at Progressive. I worked there 4.5 years, and then I started training people in their basement. A good friend of mine named Kelvin was my coworker who sat right next to me. And me and Kelvin went out to lunch one day, and Kelvin said, this job is like your security. He said, you're acting like Linus. And I said, who is Linus? And he said, Linus from Charlie Brown with the blanket. He always carries the blanket. He said, this job is your blanket. You have to make a decision. At this point, I'm teaching fitness classes in my basement at 5:30 in the morning. I have to be at work at 7. I have a 4-year-old daughter. She has to get to daycare. I'm going to go work until 4:30, and then I start training people again from 5:30 to 9 o'clock all over the city. So what happened was I was going to another boot camp type facility, and I lost a lot of weight, and I did really well in the program, and Kelton's wife started to ask me to train her and her friends. And I turned Kelton down probably 4 times. I said, nobody wants me to train them. And he said, no, they keep asking me, you gotta do it. So I started a group of training women in his basement. So they lost so much weight that their friends started asking them me to train them. So before I knew it, I was training people in Cleveland Heights. Then I would drive over to Warrensville. I'd come back to Euclid, and I was doing this all day in the midst of getting a master's and having a 4-year-old daughter. At that point, I had to make a decision to leave, because I didn't have any energy left. And completing my master's was not optional. So I made the decision to let the job go and pursue fitness training full time. I knew that at this point there was a need for a positive boot camp in the city. There was a boot camp that was very successful, but they had a very rigid format. It was, I'm gonna call you fat, I'm gonna tell you how big you are, and people, it worked because that was the only option, but people, I knew that for me, that's not in my spirit. In my spirit, I want to uplift you, I want to give you a positive escape, I want you to come somewhere that you can feel like it lets you get rid of your stress, not adds to your stress. And a friend of mine at the time said, there's this building, I think you should look into it, it's been empty for like 2 years. And at this point, I had built up probably 70 clients in homes around the city. I didn't have any more room for anybody. I was turning people away. And I went and talked to the landlord. The landlord says, hey, nobody else is looking at the place. If you think it can work for you, we'll put you on a month-to-month lease and see if it works. I've been in that building for 7 years. When we opened the doors, which was 6 months after I started training people in the homes, we had over 100 clients. Within 6 months from that, we had 300 clients. By the end of the year, we were looking at 500 clients. So I knew at that point that I had a service that people needed and they wanted. It was an option. So I say that to say competition is a good thing. All of us want to be the only stylist, the only boot camp, the only whatever. But competitions put that fire under your ass, per se. It makes you get back on top of your game. And for me, I think it's really important to never think like a small business. If you think like a mom and pop, you're going to be a mom and pop. Well, because I had worked in corporate America since I was 18, I knew that customer service was critical. I don't care how good your product is, if you treat people like shit, then they're leaving, period. And they're gonna tell their friends how you treat them. So it's really important that you brand your image, and your image is how people remember you. You have 5 minutes. When I meet you, if you're not telling me something that catches my interest in 5 minutes, you've lost me. So it's really important to make sure that you are your brand. If you're a stylist, you need to look like a stylist. If you're a fitness trainer, you need to look like fitness. If you are a restaurant owner, you need to look prestigious. You need to look fun. You understand what I'm saying? So it's really important that you are your brand. New Life has grown tremendously. We have a story that's really unheard of. You know, nobody just opens up their doors and grows that fast. But one of the things that was really critical was to have a business plan. A lot of us have a vision, but we don't have a plan. You have to have a plan. If you today are sitting here and you don't have a business plan for your business, you need to get to work tomorrow. Cleveland has so many resources that we don't even know about. We have what's called a Small Business Development Center right here on Payne, through the Urban League. A lot of people think the Urban League is closed, they are open. Their funding comes from helping us grow. If they can show the government that they helped you grow your business, that's how they keep their money coming in. So they want you to grow. If you need a contact person to reach before you go today, I'll be more than happy to give that to you. The Urban League has helped me tremendously. One thing that's really important is, I told you I was finishing a master's degree. My final project in my degree was to create a business plan. Well, I was already in business, so it made sense for me to do the business plan on New Life Fitness. So I had this whole shell kind of written out, but it was still missing the meat. So someone told me to go talk to the Urban League, and I did, and they sat down with me and helped me finish that business plan. I got an A, by the way. And I use that business plan to this day. One thing about having a business plan is you can't get lending without it. No one's gonna loan you any money if you can't show them your plan on paper. And for two, you need to revisit your plan. I literally look at my plan once a year, and I make changes to it once a year. Yeah, it sounds good to say you have a business plan, but if you don't use it, it does you no good. So for me, when I made the business plan, I talked about all this expansion, and the first 2 years I want to do this, and 3 years I want to do that. I was really doing a lot of fluff just to get the A, but when I look back at the business plan, I lived that. Like, I opened up in 2006, my first location. By 2009, I opened my second location. And in 2011, I opened my third location. And we just completed franchising New Life so that we could sell them all over the country. We also launched our own protein, which is unheard of in the black market. If you go pick up a tub of protein, there's going to be a white face on it, which is not a bad thing, but I mentioned that to say that my goal is to always break down barriers. I want to be recognized as a corporation. I don't want you to look at me as the little company that's in Cleveland. I want you to look at me as a business mogul. At some point, that's my vision. So, am I satisfied with where I am? I'm happy and I'm blessed, but I can't stop and I won't stop. And I feel like that's the passion that you have to have. When I talk to people about New Life, I get excited. If you talk to someone and they're not excited as you are about your business because you didn't make them excited about your business, you have to believe in it before you think you can sell it to somebody else. In November, many of you might know, we launched our first line of DVDs. I was very hesitant to launch these DVDs. I've been asked to do it for years, but I had a certain image that I wanted to look like. You know, I felt like a person that does a DVD should have muscles from their tongue to their toes. And I am a real person. I am a mother. I gained 70 pounds when I had both of my kids. And every woman that loses weight is not going to look like a model. It's just not realistic. However, I'm healthy. And in my skin, I feel good. I feel good about how I look. I feel good about how I feel. And I exude that to other women because you don't know what they're dealing with at home. I have people who come to me and say, my husband says he doesn't want me to lose another pound, but I want to lose 20 more pounds. So what do you do then? So I'm a counselor, I'm a psychiatrist, I'm all of those things. And a lot of times when I look back, and I tell my husband this a lot, I hated working in customer service. I did it since I was 18, I hated it. I hated it every time somebody called their phone, I hated it. I can't even stress to you enough that I hated it. But that customer service experience that I hated so much built my business today. I learned how to deal with people who were very difficult. I learned how to handle situations that almost took me out the game. So I think that it's important to understand that everything that you go through is building you up for what's next. I didn't believe that, but I do now, and I can tell other people that. The other thing that I told my husband that I really want to make sure that I stress tonight is that a lot of us want to have businesses, but we don't want to be an employee. You want to have money, you want to have this business, you want to be able to sit at home. Ultimately, you want to retire one day and be able to sit at home. But you have to be willing to do everything that you told your employees to do. If I don't have anybody to show up to clean my toilets, they will tell you, Miesha will come clean the toilet. If you tell them to wear black and then you come in with blue, you can't do that. You have to be whatever it is that you want them to be because you lose their respect. It's so important for you to be, again, the brand. Investing back in your business is critical, especially in the black community. We are very known to have bad service. We're known to have attitudes. We're known to not put money back in our businesses. And one of the things with me hearing that from people around me was to defeat all of that. When you walk in here, I want you to look and say, wow, this is really nice. Like, she really invests back, because ultimately without them paying their memberships, there is no New Life. If they don't pay their membership, there is no job for you. So everyone is not going to be easy to deal with, but they're worth your time. They're worth your energy, and they're worth you making sure that they're happy with what it is that you're providing for them. The express printing company that we purchased a few years ago came about because my supplier for all of my gym wear had just decided he wasn't making any money and he was letting the business go. So we said, all right, we're gonna try to work with a few other people, but we didn't get the service that we used to get with him. He would sit down with us, explain it all, break it down, make sure we were happy with what we were getting. I couldn't find that anywhere else. So my husband said, I think we should buy the business. I said, are you crazy? We don't know anything about doing t-shirts. So we bought the business, and the guy decided to stay on board and help us grow the business. The biggest blessing in the world. One of the things that's a challenge for me with that company is that I don't know it like the back of my hand. I like to know it like the back of my hand. If he can't show up to print my shirt, I wouldn't be able to print my shirt. So I stress that to say that it's a learning process for me. And anything you invest in, you should know it like the back of your hand. And people can tell when you really haven't researched your product. Like, you should be able to. If you ask me what's in that whey protein, I'm going to break it down to you, to the amino acids, all the way to the carbs, and the blah, blah, blah. That's what I do. You have to be what you do, okay? The last thing that I really wanted to stress today was that you have to, networking increases your network. I didn't understand that when I first opened. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I did. If anybody asked me about working with me and I thought they were trying to steal my business and steal my clients and things like that, and as you grow, you learn. And one thing that I learned is that you grow by working with other people. And I'm going to tell you something that I wrote. I wrote that you're only as good as your network. You're only as good as the people that you're connected with. You're only ultimately as successful as the people that you put around you. If your employees don't appreciate your brand will fail. If you don't appreciate your brand will fail. I cannot stress to you how many times, understand that I'm in fitness. Everybody wants to work out in January. But come May, nobody's in the gym. So the first 4 years of my company, by the end of the year, school time, we had no money. I had to figure out how I was going to pay everybody that worked for me. I have 10 employees. I have never, in 7 years, not been able to pay my employees. And you know why? Many times I didn't pay myself. Because for one thing that was important for me was for people to be able to come to New Life at any time, 7 days a week, that we were offering and get a workout. If that meant me taking a pay cut so I didn't have to cut my classes, that's what I did. So you have to be willing to sacrifice, because you're going to have many times where you don't make as much money as you want to. But if it's worth it to you, you grind it out. You are never off. You're going to work 24 hours a day. Your staff will call you. This is my assistant right here, Tawana. Literally, I took off Saturdays, and every Saturday for 6 months straight, I got woke up at 7 a.m. to ask me a question. How do I do this? How do I do that? And I was stressed. But ultimately, I had somebody there to help me. And if you don't have help, understand that you cannot run a business forever by yourself and grow. You can run it in the beginning by yourself, but if you plan to grow, you need help. So you're only as good as your network. The last thing I wanted to leave you guys with is that your image is everything, and how you want to be known is what you create for yourself. You want to be known as an asshole, then you treat people like, right. If you want to be known as a person who cares about their customers, then that's what you exude to them. Your image is everything. So when I have difficult situations on Twitter or Instagram, or somebody said they don't like New Life or whatever the case, the way that I respond is critical to me. Because as you guys know, we live in an internet stage. I can screenshot anything you say, and it never goes away. So a lot of people say, yeah, well, Miesha, you can't please everybody. I don't have to try to please everybody, but I have to be happy with what I put out there. If you're not happy with what you put out there, then you have a problem. And ultimately, people don't remember everything you did good. They remember the 2 things that you did bad. So it's so important to make sure that you brand yourself in an image that you will be proud of. And when you get done, that image should speak volumes about you. So again, thank you guys for having me. And I hope I left you with something that you can take away from tonight.
Open it up for question and answers. So if you have a question, you can feel free to come to the front. I'll start. I guess my question is, how do you pick the right people to grow with? As far as like friends and family, everybody wants to be partners, but you can't partner with everybody. So how do you make the decision to always make sure you're surrounded by the right people?
I think the most critical piece of that is to watch. sometimes you have to watch how people handle situations outside of dealing with you is what always sticks with you. So you remember that the argument that they had with somebody at work, they went on Twitter and told everybody about it. That's not somebody I was working with. And ultimately, the other piece of that is that you have to bring value to me, and I have to bring value to you. If you own a boutique, and I may be doing makeovers, maybe I want to utilize your boutique to dress the people and give them a makeover when they lose so much weight. So you have to bring value to each other. And I think that's the first thing you should always evaluate.
What type of licensing and certification did you have to come across for like you and your employees? And like how much of a obstacle was it, like as far as liability and insurance when you went to that type of stuff?
That's a good one.
Yes, it is. Liability insurance is critical. I would say that it depends on, like I have large locations. My locations are 4,000, 4,500 square foot each. So my insurance tends to be a little bit more expensive. But in terms of certifications, I made sure that all of my staff has to go through what's called group fitness training through AFA or ACE. There's only a couple that I will accept. Those are very highly accredited certifications. Everybody has to be CPR trained. I'm talking down to the person that mops the floors. If somebody falls out while you're in here, you need to be able to give them CPR. So I think that you set the standards for your company. Certifications, we have smoothie bars, which is a whole other business in all 3 of our locations. So you have to also know how to handle food. That's another state certification that you go through. So I think that to answer your question, whatever business you're in, it's important to research what's required by the state of Ohio for you to run that business. Because a lot of times, I learned a lot of this the hard way. I was between insurance, had a lady who came in to get a smoothie. She had been working out with me for 5 years. Never would have thought this would happen. She reached over to give them money or something, went into a split, now she's suing me. Because she feels like we should have had a wet floor sign, even though it was February 14th, and it was snowing, like cats and dogs. We needed to have a wet floor sign that said, watch your step. So research your brand, understand your business, cover yourself. Don't do anything without having insurance. Go ahead.
My name is Mark Matthews, and I design bow ties. So it sounds like from your story, you kind of like blew up and then had to step back a little bit and start to get organized to create your business. And I'm kind of at that point where I got to step back a little bit and start to organize. And you talked about the Urban League. Is that the only resource you use in order to be organized, or were there other resources?
The Urban League is a phenomenal resource. That's not the only resource. I wanted to expand one of my locations one time, add showers and things like that. And there was a micro lender called WeCo, which is no longer in business now, but they did micro lending, and I used them. But other than that, I literally have used all profits. I've never taken out loans for my business, which is a gift and a curse. My second location, the only reason that I opened that location was because the parking was an issue at the first location. So my goal was to close the first location. Well, people were writing me letters, begging me never not to close it, and that's how I wound up keeping the second location. But with that being said, I used the cash flow that I was making, and I was constantly putting it back. The contractor I had allowed me to pay him in payments, and I held my word. Your credit is everything. And credit is not always putting in an application, applying for credit. Credit is if I borrow $100 from you, that I pay you back when I said I was. So your word is everything. And through the grace of God, I don't even know, my husband can attest to this. This location almost made me have a nervous breakdown. It cost me over $100,000 to build out Superior. Superior was a parking lot. And I used it all the cash flow that was coming in, and as I got it, I paid him. And made it happen. So in terms of organization, I think that you have to know how you want your business to run, and to be honest with you, I'm always reorganizing. There's no set organization, because as things change, I have to adjust. And I think, again, making sure that you spend that time, weekends and things like that, making sure that you are you know, make sure things are running the way you want them to, is investing that time back.
My name is Kareem Krim. You talked about how important networking was to any business.
Yes.
So what are a couple of things that you do going into a networking environment? Like if you had 3 things that you actually absolutely had to achieve in that networking environment, what would they be?
Well, when I first would go to networking events, I was always intimidated by talking to people. Like after I started thinking about it, I said, well, that was a waste of time. So like, I sat in the back, I ate the hors d'oeuvres, and I never said anything to anybody. And one of the couple things that's important to do is to introduce yourself and take a business card, because you never know what the person next to you does and how they may be able to help your business. So that's one, making sure that you, first of all, that you're prepared. Some people come to networking events and don't even have a business card. So that's 2. And then 3, I would say would be to probably make sure that you touch at least 5 to 6 people in that room, because even though you may not be able to utilize their service, they might be able to utilize yours.
Chaz.
Chaz.
How do you deal with like negative responses?
Haters.
No, not even haters.
I hate to say haters. People will tell you, and some of my friends that are here, I'm very different when it comes to dealing with negative responses, because I'm not going to give you a negative response back. Everything that I say, I'm going to cut you to the core, but I'm going to say it so nicely that you don't even know I just cut you to the core. And I think that's important, because we're so quick to like want to chop somebody down and check them and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, some people that I've had difficult situations with have become clients later on. So it's like, I think of everybody I encounter with as a potential client. And I think that's really important. If somebody is difficult to your friend, that still could be a potential client for you. So there's no need for you to build a rift with them because they were difficult. You know what I'm saying?
My name is Q, by the way.
I think you did my spin class before, right?
What would you say, like, since it's your specialty or whatever you did in school, what are like the key components to the business plan, to having a successful business for one, and to getting people to accept your plan or to invest in it or things like that for a loan?
I think that the first thing for you to do is actually show that you've invested some time in building the plan. And to be honest with you, there's free plans available for almost every business plan. You can get a template online. If you want to open a restaurant, you can go Google restaurant business plan and get a shell. Because every business plan has like 6 topics. It's going to be like your finances, where you plan to go, what's your history, that kind of thing. As long as you go to the Urban League with at least a few things written down on paper, they will help you develop that plan for free, no cost. So I think that's critical, is to use your resources. You know, I'm telling you there's resources here, use them. They're free. And the other thing was in terms of getting people to want to invest in your brand, you have to already, I'm gonna be honest, you have to have invested in it yourself, for me. So, because every day of my life somebody's trying to get me to, endorse something. One thing I don't do is I don't shove anything down my client's throat. If you come into my gyms, you don't see me selling 10 different products on my smoothie bars. Like, I don't do that. I feel like if I don't truly use it myself, I'm definitely not going to sell it.
Courtney.
Coco?
Hi everybody, I'm Coco. So what have you found works better for you? Marketing wise, word of mouth, or spending or investing more in shoots and flyers, commercials, and everything like that?
That is such a great question, because my business, when I first started, I didn't even advertise for the first 2 years just because of word of mouth. But like I said, I have a little bit of a different situation. Right now in 2013, social media is the best way to market your business, hands down. But you gotta be willing to get up. Like, I know some of you guys follow me, like I get up in the morning, it's a job for me. Like I'm posting the transformation of before and after, that's a job for me. Definitely utilizing the local resources. I know a lot of people hate the Horizon magazine, they think it's kind of hood and blah, blah, blah. But every time I've ever put an ad in that book, my phone rings off the hook. It works. So I would say to pay attention to your market, like our market in Cleveland, what works for us. And then also using social media. It's really critical to build a brand that you keep on shoving in people's face. Okay? Mm-hmm.
My question is, I know you said you plan on expanding your business on a corporate level and branching off in other states. How do you feel? I know you said how you feel about being hands-on. How do you feel about when you're doing that, expanding over to other markets and other states?
Yeah, that's a worry for me because I feel like there's nobody that I can ever put in position that's going to do life like I do. So that is a struggle, and that's a good question. A couple of years ago, we tried to branch down into Atlanta. We were actually doing pretty good, and I got pregnant. And so I made a decision to put my family first and really invest. I was flying 2 times a week, going back and forth to Atlanta. And I definitely think that wherever market you decide to go into, you got to research that market. One thing about Atlanta, there's a lot of blacks there, but the traffic is terrible. So wherever you are, people need to be able to get to you. And that was an issue for me. I had a class at 8 o'clock, and it took people 40 minutes to drive to get there. You know, who's going to be dedicated to that? So I think that it's, just important to research whatever market that you go